Starting your own practice is hard for many chiropractors. It's riddled with both struggles and successes. But here at the Chiropractic Philanthropist, we make it easy by having chiropreneurs and entrepreneurs share their struggles and lessons learned in life and business so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And now here's your host, Dr. Ed Osborne.
All right, Brett, we're on. Not my typical interview this morning, as we kind of mentioned in the pre-chat here. So why don't we start with this? Like, we haven't connected for years. It seems like on this level. I'd love to know, like, what's transpired for Dr. Brett Jones in the last 2 to 3 years? Because it seems like your life just kind of went like a hockey stick, man.
It's weird how it always looks like that from the outside in. Right? Oh man, it's just like this. It seems like it's like this quick success. And meanwhile, as you're well aware of, because I've talked to you for at least the last 5 years. I think my first podcast with you probably would have been very close to 2016, if I remember correctly.
Oh, easily.
It's been a grind, man. It's been a grind the whole time. And I would say that the biggest key to all of it has been the consistency, right? The willingness to show up regardless of the situation. And I would say that's where we're getting to see a lot of humanity fail right now.
Yeah.
Is folding on principles and values when the pressure actually kicks in. And I would say right now, the pressure ain't even that hot, ain't that hard right now. The temp ain't that hot right now because it's about to get hotter. But with that said, in regards to your question, some big shifts happened all within the last year. Me and my wife have been calling in our center place. It's called the Axis Mundi, right? The center where everything originates from, according to the Hopi tradition. And in that, a home. We've been in Oakland for about 8 years. So I started practice there in 2013. When I graduated in 2013, which was at Life Chiropractic College West in Hayward, California, which is South Bay. Then started the practice in East Bay, Oakland, California, right next to San Francisco. Practiced there all throughout the pandemic in 2020. And we ended up doing really, really freaking well. And I have to attribute to the team that we created there. But we took a big hit, like most people in April. Mm-hmm. We saw about a 70% decrease in our visits. Because Bay Area went hard on the stay-at-home order, and so most everybody didn't come out of their house. I had people that I ended up seeing in June, July, and even August that hadn't left their house in 3 or 4 months. They were just getting delivered. People went hard on it, right? So we took a big hit in April. I had the lowest collections that I had in like 4 years in a month, or 4 or 5 years. And so, there was a point where I was like, if that was to continue, we were going to be in the negative. But we stayed strong through it. We had some people leave our team that were in non-agreement kind of with how we were showing up. And it was, it was definitely challenging. And yet those that stayed were really grouped together as a team. And we ended up finishing the year stronger than we've had any year, and broke the 7-figure mark again. I think I actually had our number one year in collections to date.
Wow.
And while that was all happening, and we were really going through it, the Source Chiropractic started getting positioned to be a franchise. And so I had started some of the trademarking process, and I had started, I read a couple of franchise books, and then I reached out to a group called iFranchise, and we ended up investing and starting to move through the franchise process. And so I started just expanding beyond California, because for those that aren't aware, California is no longer what California was. And a lot of people would say that process has been happening for a while. But part of what happened was, they shut down all of our parks. They shut down the beaches.
Yeah.
Right. The children's playgrounds were shut down. So there was legitimately nowhere I could take my kids, and they were all online. right? So there was no school, there was no playgrounds open, there was no parks open, the beaches were closed. And so it's like everything that we would want to do, to experience life and joy and all the good things, basically had to go to our back. Luckily, we had a cool backyard, so we backyard it. But obviously, then I would do what we needed to do to explore. But then that with the restrictions and the mandates and all the other stuff, I was like, this is just getting out of control. And so, for the first time really in my life, my vision of where that Axis Mundi center could be expanded beyond California. Because I'm a California kid, man, born and raised. And so as I expanded, I started looking into states that were more pro-freedom, and also better tax laws, better bang for your buck on real estate. And so I landed on Nevada and Arizona because I want to stay on the West Coast. Kids have a good relationship with their grandparents who are in Arizona. And so because I was at the time still traveling quite a bit, I was like, well, I need to be by an airport. So we're thinking Reno or Vegas, or then potentially Phoenix or Tucson. Mm-hmm. And Reno fell out pretty quick based on multiple factors. Vegas is a good time, but I feel like I'd get in trouble there. So now we're in Phoenix and Tucson. And it just, for whatever reason, I think there's something to Tucson. And so I flew in, did a fly-in, and I think that was it was like July or August of last year. And I landed and I'm driving on this. I was actually going to go see a property. And I'm on the way to drive to this house to go look at it. And was like, this is it. This is exactly what I've been praying for the last 2 years. It was a feeling. And I took my wife out 2 weeks later. We stayed at Los Ventana. It's like a little resort out here. And I set up some houses to be seen. And sure enough, man, we go to the first one, which is crazy if I flip the camera around. But we go to the first one. Actually, I think I can here.
Yeah, dude, it's so awesome. I've been following you on IG. So
that's the view from my office, right? And when we came to this spot, it was just in framing. It was just a lot with some wood framing. That was it.
Oh, wow.
But again, stepped on it. I was like, and then we did the walk through the framing, right? Of this is what could be. And like, I just started checking the boxes. We're on a little over an acre. We wanted the pool and we wanted, the layout. And anyway, so like, I'm like this, and the exact location I thought we were going to be in, the Catalina foothills. And I'm like, damn, I think this might be it for first one. So we go to Starbucks with the realtor right after. And I'm like, so I never bought a fucking house, right? I was like, so what if that was the one and we don't have to go to the other 6, right? And I'm like, what if this is the one? And he's like, well, you put in an offer. I was like, all right, what I got to do to put in an offer is we got to have so it took me through the whole process. Anyway, by the end of that day, we'd put in an offer for the response time of the next morning at 10 a.m. We got a counter offer. We countered back. We were fucking in contract the next day, like at noon.
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
What the fuck happened? I was like, oh shit. And anyway, so the journey to getting here was a wild one, which you don't have to get all the way through. But the sequence of events that needed to happen was to secure the team in Oakland, making sure that practice was going to stay strong for the Oakland community, which I didn't know if I was going to stay owner or if I was going to sell it. I ended up selling it to Dr. Jordan Fairley. Mm-hmm. So now he's the owner. That went through basically right at the end of the year. So he took over ownership. We had our last day at Oakland, helping the team get set up at the end of January. And then we moved out here. And the crazy thing about it is that right up until our move date, we didn't know if our home loan was going to go through. Oh, we ran into a few complications. So legitimately, we had the fucking truck packed. And it was in the final hour that we found out that it went through. But there was a chance that we were moving across state lines to a place that we didn't have a home.
Wow.
But it went through. And since then, so we've been on a journey. I had a few months gap before we opened the practice here. Mm-hmm. I got big into crypto investing and other investing and did pretty well. And anyway, we launched our practice August 2nd. So now we have the Source Tucson. We have the Source Oakland. There's also the Source Denver. The Source St. Pete is going to open up here the next month or two. And so, we're moving into franchise for the Source Chiropractic. Just been active in multiple places. And as you're well aware of, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And well, it's interesting too. It's so funny how our stories kind of mirror, and I won't go into, this isn't about me, but being on Victoria Island, like Vancouver Island in Victoria, last year, well, actually was it last year? Yeah. Like a year ago, July. And I'm just like, man, we got to get the heck off this island. Cause like it was an island, like you literally could not get on or off the island with everything that was going on in lockdowns. Getting a house, you starts at like 1.3. I'm like, this isn't working. Calgary, we moved here I literally flew in, looked at 30 houses, but it was the first, they took me to the first house. And then I looked down the road and I go, that house. And I'm like, why is that not on my list? And they're like, well, it's out of your budget. And I'm like, that's the house. I look at 30 houses, come back and I made an offer on the one that was out of my budget. Yeah. It was, so is that what you call it? Is it like, I knew.
Yeah.
I just knew as soon as I stepped in that house, I was like, this is the one.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's the forever house for my kids. But, so I love the story. And I mean, there's even a backstory, like even a further backstory to that, because you haven't just been in practice. Like, I mean, there's a bigger piece to this. I mean, there's a reason why, like you can do a Facebook. Well, you don't do as much stuff on Facebook, but say like an Instagram live or an Instagram video, and you'll have like 3,000 likes and I don't know how many shares and stuff. Right. What is it what was the moment you found? Like, what was I don't even know if you can pin it down to like, what was the one thing that you could say really shifted for you when things really started to escalate? I mean, I talked to Dr. Ben Tapper the other day, and it was like a switch for him. But what would you say for you from, kind of like, hey, I'm out here to no way, I'm influencer, kind of that shift?
Yeah. Well, I would say at this time, so, I mean, I've always been a producer, right? So, I mean, if you look back, a lot of my Instagram's not even on there. I have over like 2,500 posts on Instagram, but last year, at the end of the year, we started archiving a lot of it just because of what was happening with everything.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So, I mean, I have over 2,000 archived posts. Cause I started Instagram back 2012, 2013. So you won't see anything of my kids anymore. So none of my kids are on my Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. That's for multiple reasons. But, so I feel like I've been at this for a long time, YouTube videos, I think I've done over 1,000. Again, a lot of them aren't even available. And then Instagram posts, I think it's like 2,500 posts or something like that. Facebook, for a long time, I was going live every day. So you do something called the Rise to Innateness. So and then also the training. So Kairos training culture, is one of, let's say, the biggest development past that I've had with teaching seminars. For a long time, I was teaching 25 to 26 seminars a year. And now it's less. So it's been the constant evolution, if you will, in the art of communication. But I would say the biggest thing that shifts right now, and interesting enough, I did watch the rise of Jordan Peterson last night, who's also a fellow Canadian, right? Yeah. And I watched it, and I found a lot of similarities. But there was actually one line specifically that I resonated with. And it was one of the main causes of his rise to fame. And he studied a lot of authoritarianism, but also total, whatever the total, I don't know how to say it right now.
I'll mispronounce it too.
Right. So totalitarianism, something like that. Right. So he studied a lot of that, and he teach class on, if you were in Nazi Germany, I can show you exactly how you would be the one who was doing these horrific things. Like by basically he teach class on how you would be at Auschwitz, and you'd probably be putting people in gas chambers because of how those progressions slowly happened. Right. And so for a lot of the great thinkers in the world, and I think there's few, say that again, for a lot of the great thinkers in the world, I think there's few, because many aren't thinking for themselves. And if we're going to end up anywhere, we need to get into mental sovereignty and body autonomy, which is actually one and the same. But what he said was, there's multiple lines that are getting crossed throughout the progression. And we never really know where humanity, right, and the group mind is going to say, no, that's too far, right? And so what he was willing to do at that time is saying, no, this is my line, right? And because he was willing to do it before humanity was willing to do it, and the reason he says, no, this is my line at this time, was because he thought all the way along the progression, because he had studied it for years and then taught class on it. And he's like, if I follow this way of thought down the road and the lines that keep getting crossed, this is where we end up, and I'm not willing to go there. So why not say this is enough here? Which I think is powerful. And he made his stance on gender pronouns, right? And so because of that, he got a lot of fucking heat, obviously, from a lot of different places, and would show up at different talks and get booed and shouted out and whatever. And it was also his rise to fame, because he was willing to do that at a point that most weren't. Yet he found his people that could also potentially see along that spectrum. So I would say what has happened now, it's a variety of factors. But I always ask, the question of, well, where is this going? And many are so focused on the one potential challenge that is being requested of them to go into compliance on or acceptance of, where I'm like, okay, but if you comply here to this and you accept this, you're more than likely to be willing to accept this. And then you're more than likely to be willing to accept this and comply to this. And this keeps going down the road. So I did a video March 16th of last year where I asked the questions, because what had happened, which people completely fucking forgot about, is that when we entered lockdown, right, there was no numbers associated with why. Right? There wasn't a certain virulent factor. So like, is there a certain level of virulence or a certain level of death rate or a certain level of whatever that qualifies a lockdown? Never happened, right? Is there a certain amount of spread or infections that qualifies a lockdown? Never happened. And I said, this is fucking dangerous. Mm-hmm. If they're not giving you any numbers for why you're entering a lockdown, that can lead to many different things. I asked questions. You need to think about this. If you're willing to go into a nationwide or citywide, whatever the fuck it is, lockdown, stay-at-home order without any data, then one, that means that you're probably willing to go into it at any moment. And now we've gotten to see this across the world, right? Australia had like no fucking cases, and they've had one of the most severe lockdowns.
Yeah.
And they said, well, this is just a zero COVID policy, which we all know is fucking impossible with a respiratory infection that spreads the way that it does. So I kept going down the road. I said, well, if you're willing to comply here, would this be, could this lead to the potential of a willingness to comply for a vaccine and then mandatory vaccinations? And then again, just keep going down the road and asking the questions, but many can't think that far ahead. Mm-hmm. So because of this, right, if people look at, and then this goes into the mask and all the other shit. Yeah. So, which again, I find so silly that nobody's actually willing to just go to PubMed and research like, again, this isn't me. Go to PubMed, because you don't want to hear from me because I'm a chiropractor, right? But you don't want to hear from the MD that's not in alignment with the narrative anyway. So it doesn't fucking matter. Go to PubMed, put face mask, respiratory virus. Let's just do that, right? That's how you search scientific research articles to see what the science has been done. What you'll find is the mass majority say they don't work. That's it. That was the simplicity for me. It doesn't work. And this has been studied for years, right? Studied for years. Now all of a sudden it does? No, it still doesn't work. Yeah. So I was willing to find the line for myself of I will never, this is a hard line for me. I will never mandate a vaccine ever for any of my clients, for any of my staff, ever. Any vaccine. Hard line. Why? Because I can see where the fuck that goes. I don't care how effective or ineffective a vaccine is, right? This one's, by the way, proven to be very ineffective. Almost 100% ineffective at stopping the transmission. And a lot of people don't even know that because they got so brainwashed with the actual misinformation that getting this vaccine is going to save grandma. This vaccine was never created to be stop and slow the transmission of a virus. This vaccine was created as a prophylactic to decrease the symptoms when getting the virus. It was never meant to stop the transmission, but very few want to talk about it. And that's the design of the fucking actual vaccine from the actual people that made the vaccine, right? You got one of the lead scientists, was I think it's Robert Malone, who created the mRNA vaccine, being censored and silenced and taken off the Wikipedia on his relationship to the mRNA. This is fucking, it's insanity. Yeah. It's just lies, and then more people is going on. So going back to the original question, was there a turning point? And I had this dialogue with you in the pre-chat. Was the thing that shifted for me, like, again, it's multiple factors. One is obviously the preparation. So the preparation's been there because I've been doing the work. Two is a deep understanding of the principle that we work with as chiropractors, that the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism, right? That it needs no help from the outside. It just needs no interference. And so I'm in deep alignment with the natural way. Now, medicine is there for a specific time and place, but I do think there should be choice for when that happens. The third piece was that I was willing to draw the line when many are willing to continue in compliance. And because of that, there's few that are willing to engage and take the heat and the pressure. And this is where it goes into my backstory. So why would some, right, be willing to take the criticism, be willing to potentially be censored or banned or whatever else? And for me, it's fairly simple. I've been through worse.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I know you've been through some dark places too, man. And so the truth of it is when I lost my brother in 99. And then following the loss of my brother, my dad lost his job at the highway patrol. My parents split. My mom's suicidal, depressed. She leaves us, right? And in that time frame of a couple years, like, I was depressed. I was suicidal as well. I never thought I was gonna make it past the age of 18. And I've had many challenges since then. But to me, some motherfucker that I don't know talking shit on Instagram is the least of my fucking worries. You know what I mean? Yeah. I have to face my family at the end of the day. And that's another component, is that what future are we creating for the generations to come, right? Which is a native way of thinking. Anytime you take an action, you're respecting and honoring the 7 generations that came before you, and you're planting seeds for the 7 generations to come. So if you can feel into what happens if you make a certain medical procedure mandatory, right? And they were doing this still when it was an emergency use authorization. By the way, the trials, even though they gave it FDA approval, it's not through its fucking trials yet, right? The trials weren't set to end until 2023. So here we are 2 years at least early on an approval, which we know is fucking political, not based on the actual efficacy and safety of this vaccine. And here we are, right? But what's the danger in that? What's the danger in that?
Yeah.
What can happen, right, is that at any given time, as long as the government deems it necessary, and we've seen how easy they can do that. Again, it doesn't just go to some different, if you think, oh, all these deaths in the United States, I mean, it's necessary. Go to all the countries that don't have the same death rate. By the way, how many people in the US were dying with COVID instead of due to COVID? By the way, how many influenza deaths got attributed to COVID? How many pneumonia deaths got attributed to COVID? By the way, we're using a PCR test, which is not even FDA approved. So it's like, there's multiple, what's the actual excess deaths? That's a better question. But the danger in this is that they can shoot you up with whatever the fuck they want, as long as they deem it necessary, if you agree to mandatory vaccination at this point. So there's my fucking line, because I believe in body autonomy, right? And across the board, right? Some people are going to fight on this issue, but they won't fight it on for the women's right issues. I'll fight for all the women's right issues as well, right? Body autonomy. If it's your body, then you have a choice. But here's what happens, and it's already happening, and you can fucking see it. And that's why I'm going to show up and go hard in the paint, because I'm worried about what's going to happen to my fucking kids. If they can control your body, they control your mind. If they can control your mind, they control your body. They're one and the same. If you don't have sovereignty over your body and mind, you're no longer human.
Yeah.
That's why this is a human rights issue. Humanity is here having an individual experience, right, through the five sense reality to express and learn and evolve. As soon as we start going into groupthink, group mind, group body, right, you're losing out on what makes a human life worth living. You're going to give up your rights of expression. Already happening. What do you think the fucking censorship is? Right? We're already losing the right and freedom of speech.
A little bit at a time, every time.
Yeah. And it's becoming more and more apparent, right? So you'll lose the freedom of expression. You'll lose the freedom of thought. The freedom of thought, right? Because if you can no longer express it, you're going to stop even getting the fucking actual freedom of thought dropping in. You won't even know the vibration of individuality. It just becomes the hive mind. And again, what's the danger in this hive mind? It's being driven by specific people that don't actually give a shit about you. You want proof? They say this is about your health. Tell me how much they've communicated about health this entire time.
Zero.
They don't give a fuck about your health. They never did. Why do they still let pharmaceutical companies prescribe opiates? They know they've been killing people for a long time. Yeah. Long time. But yeah, here we are still doing opiates, right? The legal drug dealers. We know that medicine, right? Western medicine is one of the third leading causes of death in the world.
Yeah.
At least in the United States through iatrogenesis, which means that properly prescribed medication killing people as a third leading cause of death. We know that heart disease has been one of the top, right, causes of death. Yet we still allow all of the things that create the heart disease, which is majority lifestyle. So this is about your health, but we're not sharing or giving you any advice or any education about your health. And that those that are, like myself, other chiropractors, other natural health advocates, are being censored. It ain't about your health, it's about control. So you can say, well, maybe it's better. Well, is it fucking better? How's your life been the last 18 months? For the majority, you've been fucking miserable. So tell me how it's going to get better.
More, and people are getting more, like just over the last 2 years, their health has actually gone down. It's like it's in the shitter, man. Yeah, it's right. Crazy.
So I think people are starting to catch on. And that's why part of me, I'll say it right here, right now. Part of me, at first I was like, the politicization of this is absolute garbage. And then at the very least, I'm like, at the very least, there's a lot more people getting educated about the harm and the pitfalls of big pharma, right? Because, the natural health or the quote unquote alternative side of health, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me, is the primary, has been saying this shit for years, right? So now you're getting a larger percentage that is getting to see that big pharma has never cared about your health. It's a business, right? And so they create one product that creates a symptom that might alleviate a symptom, but it creates other symptoms that then need more product. And the goal is not to heal you, it's the goal is to make you a customer, right? And so this propaganda education starts from birth with vaccination, and then antibiotics and all this other shit, right? That then people think that they need. Well, here we have some outliers, right? So it's like, my family don't take it. None of that shit. No over-the-counter, no properly prescribed medications, no vaccines, none of it. And yet we're probably some of the healthiest people in this fucking country. How the fuck does that work?
And you're the crazy one, Brett.
I'm the crazy one, right? But guess what? None of my friends have been hospitalized due to COVID-19, right? All these crazy wackos out there trying to force shit, and all their friends are dying.
Yeah.
But I have nobody in my circle has been hospitalized or had severe reactions to COVID-19. 0 in 18 months. Tell me how the fuck that works. Tell me how nobody from my practice has been hospitalized. We've seen over 20,000 visits. How the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
We must be on to something, Ed. But we're the crazy ones, right? The crazy ones that actually understand that the body can heal itself.
Well, I'm a marketer, so I totally get, I totally, observing what's happened over the last 2.5 years, it's really quite, brilliant to think about. I mean, there's a lot of really great principles in marketing, but 2 of the principles in marketing is, number 1, like create an arch enemy, like the division, right? Like, so you look at any great marketing campaign, you look at any great movement. I mean, look at a lot of the landscape of politics. It's all about creating an enemy. And so that's number 1. But number 2 is having people commit for a principle or for something that's outside of themselves. It's much easier for someone to commit to a decision that's going to affect their children, their mother, their father, their neighbor, right? The pressure that's put on them from the outside than it is for them to make an inner decision and stand hard, stand strong inside of that inner decision of like, hey, this is what's right for me, and not care about what anyone else is fucking going to tell them, like, or judge them. And that's where it's the real division. It's really quite brilliant if you think about how they've done this, and they've tried to do this in the past. Remember, I mean, this isn't the first virus that's whipped through the world. Right. Like they've tried to do this, but it was never as successful.
Well, I think what helped here was they got the buy-in from the Technocracy, right? So right now what happened is, for the first time, what we saw last year that we were aware of, we actually got to see the leaning of Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook on the left. Right. Before then, at the least the perception was that these were neutral platforms where people could come to share. That no longer exists. Right. They are very, very apparent in what narrative they're following, what agenda they're behind, and they are left leaning. Right. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And so because of that, now you're taking what big pharma and potentially big government has tried to do, and you're combining it with the way people access information. And so they're controlling the information much, much better. To the point, again, you mentioned any certain word, they put a certain tag on it, or they can shadow ban you, or they can downregulate how many people can see it, or upregulate how many people can see it. They control what's on the banners. So it's like the brainwashing has been the strongest I've ever seen. And so I think that was the switch that happened, was that these platforms became very public with what they are doing, and unfortunately, many don't see it, or are willing to accept it.
So Brett, let me ask you a question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but on that note, as health professionals, I practiced for 14 years. I'm still, I'm looking at reactivating my license. I have to rewrite some boards. I became a chiropractor because I wanted to help people outside of using drugs, surgery, right? I wanted to be the first solution when someone had a challenge, or if they just, simply wanted to maintain their health or be a healthy person. But, one of the schools, I won't, maybe, I don't know, maybe we can throw the school under the bus. I don't care. One of the schools that we have at the chiropractic college has just released that, that I guess they've kind of mandated, unless the students, the college students,
and they deserve to shot the fuck out, and I'm going to call them out today.
So what are your feelings on this? I mean, this profession is founded on, the basis of not injecting things into your body, not putting, it's completely, a 180. And, the unfortunate thing is Palmer's one of the foundational institutes. So I'm wondering now is this going to set a precedent for others? So what are your feelings on that?
That they're cowards. That's my feeling. And that president's a fucking coward. And I'm, so I'm going to call it, here's the thing, man, the leadership, right now in chiropractic schools is weak. It's fucking weak. And when I say that, it's again, they're looking for acceptance, right? And this has been the problem with chiropractic really since its origination.
Oh, that's so true.
Is that chiropractors always kind of feeling less than and or needing acceptance from something outside of their craft. And that was the biggest thing that shifted for me as a chiropractor when I started to own the power within chiropractic. Like, I don't need to be accepted by any other profession, right? I don't need you to validate me. I validate me, right? My results validate me. Right. And so what's happened is you have cities or states or whatever. And so Palmer down, oh, this is what Illinois is doing. So Marmolean Clinic needs to follow and blah. No, what the fuck do you stand for?
Yeah. Close the clinic.
It's close the clinic or fucking fight. That's what I'm saying. What's happening in a lot of these businesses, right, by the way, is that there's some businesses that are trying because they're private companies. So they have that discretion. And so what happens is sometimes they'll go to put in a mandate. The employees will say, fuck you, we're not going to do it. We'll leave. And they say, okay, we'll take it off the table because if you guys all leave our business, we'll not make it. So, okay, we'll keep going. So all it took was the people standing up and then this thing flopped. But this is what is crazy to me is at some point, again, I want to draw on the line. At some point you have to draw the line for your fucking values and principles for what you do. Otherwise your entire life will be unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Right? Because I could choose the comfortable route, right? Of not getting pressure from the city or public health or for whatever, I could choose to be accepted. Oh yeah, put the needle in my arm. Then I can go to the restaurant that I wanted to go to or whatever.
Get on a plane.
But guess what? At the end of the day, I'll tell you right now, if that goes against my principles, my values, and my purpose, I will live a much less meaningful life. Mm-hmm. So the problem that's happening right now, these chiropractic schools, and it's been the problem, is their need for acceptance and lack of actual leadership. What the fuck do you stand for? Figure it out. If you're at the fountainhead, I hope that you got that position, right? I hope that you got that position with a certain understanding of the chiropractic principles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, in your leadership, you have to be one to stand up for them. And you got to be able to communicate to your students, this goes against the foundation that we are built upon. We are going to fight this together or we're going to die trying. That's where I'm at with all this. I don't give a fuck what they try to do to me, right? My life, I thought I was going to die before the age of 18 anyway. Mm-hmm. So this is a hill that I die on. Right? Because I won't look at my kids old, right? Say, oh man, yeah, you know what? I'm sorry, I gave in. You know, I'm sorry that they just inject you with all the bullshit that you want. I'm sorry that you don't have a right to natural health anymore. You know, I just wanted to be accepted, you know, and fuck that. No, dad went to fucking jail or dad fucking got shot up. Or I don't care, right? Through history, right? If you actually see the people that had a mission, had a purpose, and had their values, a lot of the most influential people of our lifetime and beyond were assassinated. You know? And what was the willingness? Here's the truth, Ed. You know this. We're all going to fucking die. There's two things that you have to accept about death in order to truly live. One, you have to be okay with dying. Mm-hmm. Or two, there's no such thing as death.
Yeah. No.
Either way, when you empower yourself in one or both of those, right, you can actually live. So many people are scared of death. And I say, why? Well, like, look at your fucking wife. What's worse?
Yeah. Or not even scared, Brett, but they're just unconscious.
Yes.
You know, and this is why I'm really, you know, sometimes I'm a little bit upset with the term being woke, because, you know, it's been hijacked as a real, Sure. I honestly, I think woke just means like waking up to what the fuck is going on in the world right now. Or even just what's going on in your, like, let's make it more spiritual, more, you know, central to like wake up to what's going on in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told you in the pre-chat, I'm like, yeah, their mom came over and picked up my kids, like my 8-year-old and 11-year-old. And like literally I'm intentionally, hug, kiss, I love you, because, and in my mind, I'm like intentionally, not subconsciously, I'm awake. I'm like going, God forbid that I don't see them next Tuesday. Like, or something happens to me or something happens to them, or God knows what happens in the freaking world right now. And that's what I think a lot of people are just really unconscious. They're the unconscious passenger in their life right now. And we just need to wake them the fuck up.
I got an exercise for that. So it's in the book, right? There's a chapter called Memento Mori. Remember, you too shall die. And in this, we go through an exercise. And this is something I've done at a lot of the training camps. And I think it's good and healthy to do at least once a year. But I imagine there's many here. What's
the name of the name of your book is?
Know Who the Fuck You Are.
Know Who the Fuck You Are. Right. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So here's the exercise. You can go through this right now too. It's an imagination visualization exercise. So remember, you too shall die. So what will be said about you at your funeral? So take a moment, and I want you to envision that today's the day. Because the truth is, none of us know when that moment is coming. Right? It's guaranteed, but none of us know exactly when it's coming. And for some of you listening right now, it could actually be the day. So visualize it right here and right now. Today is the day. And I want you to visualize your death. You die today. And as you die today, in a few days, hopefully, some loved ones will be creating a funeral or memorial service for you. Now I want you to attend your own funeral. Who's there? Who showed up? Who didn't show up? What are they going to say about you? What will live on from you? What are the lessons that have the ability to go beyond you? Do you like what you hear? Or are you disappointed? Did you live a legendary life? Or did you live a life easily forgotten? For many, this exercise is painful. And I offer you an opportunity. There's a possibility that you can go through this exercise and feel extremely grateful and honored by the life that you lived. And then you could truly say, without hesitance, without restriction, today would be a good day to die.
It's powerful. Yeah. That will be dust, man. Everyone, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's one thing we all have in common.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing that lives on. So anytime somebody's going through a death experience, with a family, friend, a loved one, I say in some ways they're more accessible to you now, right? Because energy doesn't die, right? That's a law of physics, right?
Yeah.
And in that, go ahead.
So with this exercise, this is an exercise that you would do with attendees that like at your events, but you also have this inside of like, I just wanted to kind of go back to your book as well. So know who the fuck you are. Like where can listeners or where can people actually find your book, Brett?
So it's on Amazon, and they can also, if they go to my Instagram, there's like in the story highlights, I believe there's a link to get it through me as well. Yeah, so you can go to Amazon, but I actually really like the Audible. It was interesting. I recorded the Audible in, I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2019. Right for the, I think it just came out right around the same time. The book launched April 19th, which is Bicycle Day, for those that know what kind of bicycle day I'm talking about. April 19th in 2019. And then the Audible version came out just like a month after. But I never listened to the book because I don't want to listen to my own voice. It's very, very rarely. But interesting enough, I'm driving to Facilitator Camp in 2020, which was in Leavenworth, Washington. And I did the drive from Oakland. So it was a pretty long drive. And so I'm on the drive, and then somebody tags me in a post on Instagram, and they're like, "Oh man, I love this chapter of Know Who the Fuck You Are," like listening to it again or something like that. And I was like, "Fuck, I've never listened to that. I should put it on." and so I put it on. I'm like, that's pretty fucking good. And so I think the Audible is legit and that's how the book came out. So I actually did a coaching group for 3.5 months called the Unshakables. And I would go live Monday through Thursday at 6 a.m. after I came out of my movement, breathwork, and meditation. And it'd be like a 10-minute transmission. And so we recorded them all. And then I was like 2 weeks through doing them. I was like, fuck, these are pretty fucking good. And I had, I had a woman in there who was interested in personal coaching with me. And I'll tell you what, if you want a personal coach with me, if you help transcribe all these things that I'm doing, I'll coach you for free. And so she started transcribing them. And then, so by the time I was done, I think I had like 61 lessons that had been transcribed. And then I pulled a few out, and we ended up with 52 lessons that are in the book. And it's basically transcriptions and then me going there and bringing a little bit more clarity to what didn't fully translate from spoken word to book. But that's the book. And so it reads very well. There's all I'm trying to say on the Audible version. But when it comes to that exercise specifically, I think it's chapter 5. Memento Mori. I go through the exercise, but yes, this is it's a healthy activity to visualize your death. It's healthy because it'll show you where you're at with it. And like I said before, until you're fully accept that you're going to die and be okay with dying, like now, then I imagine you're holding something back in your life, right? What is not expressing? Because if we have a fear of death, I can almost guarantee you feel like you haven't lived. So is it possible? So this is, I'll say this, and then it's probably getting close to the end here, I imagine. At my brother's, I attended my brother's funeral. Right? He died at 18 years old. And 300 people there, because some people were packed outside. He was loved. He was loved for sure. And at the time, it was comforting to hear these words being said by his friends, but then it later started to really get to me. And what was being said was, "Man, Ryan, we're gonna miss you. We love you." And he just died with so much potential, right? Because obviously. And I agreed. Like, what could have Ryan done? Fuck, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason it fucking started to hurt so bad later, because I realized that's exactly what I don't want said at my funeral.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when people have the opportunity, and I visualize this, quite often, when they have the chance to go up and talk about Brett, it's like, fuck, man, that fucker gave it all he had every day. And he died with nothing left. That's what I want, I know everybody's not on that, but that's where I come from, and that's what I want. And that's why I live the way that I do. That's why I speak the way that I do, is because life matters to me. Life matters. And I have no fear of death.
Yeah. It's interesting, Brett, that you kind of bring this up, and I think a lot of us, and I'll use the word misunderstood, or I'm misunderstood by a lot of people. I think you're misunderstood. A lot of marketers are, we'll call ourselves marketers, or people who put ourselves out there, producers. Right. And, we have conversations like this, we get real. And people might think, they're just get on, like, this is just marketing or something. This isn't marketing. I've been doing this like 7 years. I've done over 370 interviews on this podcast, other podcasts I've created. Do you know that there's people who are no longer on this planet that I've interviewed? This is a legacy project. This is something like that person's children can go back and listen to that man's voice. Right. And, people can go and listen to your book on Audible. People can read the book. Like, as a producer, it's about creating legacy, and whether that's for your children, whether it's for the world, or for whatever it might be, but it's always about, carrying on. So, the last piece I'll pull from what you're saying here is, what is it, and I'll ask the listeners, is what is it that's unfinished, right? Like, what is it that we need to complete? Like, and that was one of the things that, before we started the conversation today, is I think I even said to you, I said, dude, I think you're a little misunderstood sometimes. And you laughed, or kind of smiled or laughed. You're like, really? You think so? But I think we're all misunderstood.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And if you're not misunderstood, you're not putting yourself out there enough.
I know. Yeah. Truth, brother.
Yeah.
Shout out to the real ones, that show up and they're willing to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, in the dystopia, right, that's being created by some, if you're not an outlier, you're participating in it.
Yeah.
Think about that, right? So here's an opportunity, right, for all of us to utilize our life, to create a living experience worth living. Simple, right? If you don't like the direction that things are headed, then it is on you to help co-create and steer it back into the direction that you want to experience life in. I don't want to experience life in isolation. I don't want to experience life in constant fear. I don't want to experience life masked. Because I value human connection. I value human expression, right? I don't want to experience life as a slave. My ancestors have already gone through that, right? So there's lessons to be learned along this journey, both through history and through the imagination of what could be. And it's up to us to co-create the life that we want to live. Stop thinking about dying. Dying will create a life non-worth living, right? When that dominates your thought pattern. So think about a life worth living.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today, man. I know this has been an incredible discussion. I knew it was, I wanted to hit record before we actually even started recording. It was, I'm like, oh, well, let me hit the record button fast. Not a typical TCP podcast interview. And that's what I knew this would be. And I got to tell you, I am so, I love doing the normal flow of conversation that I do with people, but these are the ones I feel are really impactful. Like, these are the ones this is what people need to hear, is
Agreed.
Your truth, my truth. And so they can find their truth. But I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate you, man. Hopefully when I'm down in the States, one of these days, we'll meet up and
we'll love that, man.
Yeah.
We'll get you a tan, bro.
I am tan. What are you talking about?
You always reach out at the right time. And so I always say, yeah, because I understand what this, again, it's part of a legacy project. I appreciate the way you show up and the way you hold space for people to express themselves. And I also know you got a big story to share as well, which I'm looking forward to.
Someday
it's coming true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, Brett.
All right, brother.
Want more certainty with your x-rays? Want to streamline your workflow more so you can see more patients? Or just want to limit your liability with x-rays? Get a second opinion. Dr. Cliff Tao is a chiropractic radiologist and reads diagnostic imaging studies for all chiropractors. His professional, highly detailed reports are provided next business day with stat reports available same day. Head to clifftaodcdacbr.com for more information. That's clifftaodcdacbr.com today. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn.
So you've heard the struggles, you've heard the successes, and this episode is done. But there's still so much more to come and so much more to learn. Head on over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive free practice building tips and strategies, including how to market your practice with your very own podcast and so much more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Chiropractic Philanthropist.